There you go. You are up. Go ahead.
1.75. Now, if this was 2.0, this feels like it's a slam for Laporta. 2.0. 1.75. I'm less aggressive here. And just how this team is built, this team has got the 101, the 104. This team almost feels like it shouldn't be drafting any players because it has no idea what it's going to do. You know what I mean? Like, and not in a bad way, in a good way. It's probably looking at this and going, I could go Marvin Harrison at 101. Then at 104, I could go Jaden Daniels or Malik Neighbors. I can do anything I want.
I'll let you make the pick, and then I have a very poignant question that I guarantee anybody that has a team like this has to consider. So make your pick.
It's going to be the 106. This team is just completely going into the skid. It's completely going, all right, we're just building through picks.
I was considering two assets here. It would be either 106 or it would be taking a quarterback and just plugging my nose and going, okay, Tua, I don't really want to do it. But what Tua does is it keeps my flexibility with 101 and 104, and it doesn't show my hand to the rest of the league. Because let's say I take a quarterback or I don't take a quarterback and I go with the draft pick. Now you're subject to kind of how the tiers shake out, right? Like there may be only one quarterback that really is seen as the elite tier. And yet you've already penciled in Marvin Harrison at 101. Now all of a sudden it's like Shane's building a QB room from the 104 and the 106. They're flexible.
I have 2.5 months, 3 months to change my mind and also let other people change my mind. Any of these. I could go, well, what do I need to do to get that 106 up even higher with my later capital that I get? Do I move back with the 101? Do I move back with the 104? To me, it's just the chess pieces of being able to move around, especially getting those first two picks. But yes, you shouldn't just tie yourself into, I'm making Marvin Harrison. Right now, 3 months from the draft, that's my mindset.
Yeah, I don't mind doing the 3 picks. It feels you're going to feel a little queasy about your team just because it's
going to look terrible. And I've done a couple startups where I've went draft pick heavy, and you look at the players and you're like, oh, what did I do? But then you look at your draft capital and you go, okay, I have 3 of the first 6 picks. We can make this work any way I need to make this work. Hopefully you have enough creativity and enough, I don't want to say work ethic, but enough tenacity to go out and make some deals.
So real quick, because we're only going to go 4 rounds on this thing, I want to ask you about later on in the draft when you have 3 picks like that to start. Because you get to that range in, round 7, 8, 9, where it's like, okay, the rookie picks, just for the flexibility, kind of like we talked about at the beginning, are better than drafting the players on the board, right? You're sitting there going, man, should I take the 202 or Hollywood Brown? Chris Godwin, you can argue the picks are more valuable because there's more flexibility. And especially now that you have 3 of the top 6 picks, hell, it might be just one of the mid seconds that you drafted that allows you to trade up 1 spot to get the player that you want earlier. So it's like more flexibility in later rounds, especially at startup time this year or this point of the season, makes sense. Now, if you started with all draft picks, though, are you less likely to still hammer the 111, the 201? Are you trying to fill roster spots, or are you fine leaving this startup draft with 9 picks out of the top 24? Don't even care.
Yeah, it's going to be more based on what players specifically there when they're drafting at that spot. Legitimately, like if it's Marquise Brown or the 203, I'll take the 203. If I can get some combination of like DeAndre Hopkins and maybe 2 old other wide receivers, but that are decent later in the draft, maybe I do that. And maybe I try to halfway compete next year, or at least see if those players can bring some capital during the season that I could trade. Once we get past about the 204, 205 rookie draft, then I'm more likely to just lean player for the purpose of either it's going to be a young player that I think has some upside, even if I don't think they can hit it, it's not likely, or one of these old players that I think can maybe help this team maybe back into the playoffs, something like that.
Interesting point. I'm up next, the team that started with Anthony Richardson in the 103. Seeing the end of the draft where I'm facing 2 teams that have already gone heavy with non-quarterbacks, I think I'm going to go with Tua here. I'm going to plug my nose and draft Tua. I don't love Tua, but I think with the 103, what this allows me to do is I'm not tied to a QB at 103. There's a chance that I can trade back a spot because like we talked about, the team that has the 104 and the 106. You're probably going Marvin Harrison at 101, right? There's a decent shot where you're interested. If there's a clear QB2, you may be interested in moving up that one spot. So I'm looking at that going, okay, there's a team that's going to need 2 quarterbacks, probably, at least one, that's probably picking ahead of me at the 101. The 103, most likely the best player available is going to be a quarterback. But what if it isn't? What if it does end up being the wide receiver 2 of the class? So I've kind of added value to my 103 here by taking the second quarterback so that I'm not pigeonholed into drafting a QB with that pick. And I think you would agree you like the prospects of whoever the wide receiver 2 is. Right now, I would take that over all the receivers on the board. You agree with that? So I'm going to go Tua with this pick. Lock in the non-pressure to take a quarterback at that 102. It makes a little more flexibility with that rookie pick that I already invested in, knowing there's probably going to be at least 1-2 more quarterbacks go off the board before I pick again. So you are up with another receiver team. Last time you faced this, you just win another receiver. So what are you doing here? CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are you stacking your Amon-Ra with his QB, or are you passing?
Obviously, it's an exercise here. This is kind of what happens if you want to go wide receiver build. This is where you start going, am I just going to reach for this quarterback right here? Do I risk the guy behind me, the gal behind me? They've got 2 picks. They also need a quarterback, and they don't have one on the board. There's a good chance they could take one of the quarterbacks that I want to take here. I guess Jared Goff is as good as it gets. I'm going to go Jared Goff. I don't love it, but I'll be honest with you. When you go wide receiver build like this, you're probably more apt to make a move like this. Draft a quarterback where you go, I don't actually love it, but considering the alternatives, it played out okay because I'm getting the stack when I'm on Ra. If the 2 people behind him, or excuse me, the 1 person behind him didn't have 2 picks back to back and also need a quarterback, probably would risk it and see if Jared Goff could come back on the way around.
So question for you, Brandon Ayuk is the next receiver up according to Keep Trade Cut. He was a top 10 receiver this past year. In a league that was not a startup, would you trade Brandon Ayuk for Jared Goff?
Go heavily depend upon my team build.
No, you need a QB. I'm assuming. But it's a 1-for-1, meaning you don't have the option to get somebody cheaper. Because here's the thing.
Well,
you're
essentially asking. You ruin my plans because my plan is going to be, the next sentence is going to be, well, what can I get cheap?
And that, I think, is where people get caught up with. And I'll just say, I don't think you should take Jared Goff here. But a lot of people would take Jared Goff here because they're looking at the board. They have this innate fear that the rest of the league is just going to squeeze them out of QB. Everyone's going to take 3 and 4, and then it's going to come back to me, and the best starter left is going to be Will Levis, and I'm screwed. The reality is that's probably not how it's going to play out because you're going to get a lot of other people that are going to, I already have 2 QBs. It doesn't make sense for me to go Matt Stafford ahead of a receiver that's easily worth a first rounder, and that's what it would take. Now, do you think Jared Goff is in a tier of his own right here, Shane? Clearly better than everybody else. Because if they're iffy on that, I would say you pass on him and you just continue to hammer assets that are worth first rounders, or you take the 107 and then you just gamble that, hey, I'm going to pressure everybody else behind me to take the quarterbacks that they really don't want to take. That would be my only pushback of, because a lot of people would do what you did. Hey, I got to take a QB. It's the next one up. Guess who's cheering with that pick, Shane? Everybody before you that already has 2 QBs. They're going, thank you. Take Jared Goff. Take Bryce Young. You can have all those guys. Correct.
Push a wide receiver down to me. I'm good with that. I wasn't drift those guys anyway. That's what everyone's saying behind him. No, those are good points. I mean, in retrospect, maybe that's a good talk through exercises. Why are you going to draft Jared Goff? Because if you do draft Jared Goff, I mean, you're not getting any kind of difference maker at quarterback. As you noted, most of the teams in this draft have 2 quarterbacks at this point, or at least 1 quarterback. You might be better served just going Brandon Ayuk here and leaning into it, Sam Laporta, or the 107, whichever you find to be the most valuable. The only thing is you have ARSB. That plays into people's minds. And we get this question all the time, is how many players do I want from the same offense? Do I really want Laporta and ARSB? We tell people repeatedly, like, well, it doesn't matter. It's a good offense. It doesn't matter if you have 2 players from it. That's fine. So maybe in retrospect, this person's going to take off Jared Goff. They didn't hit select. They thought about it. They actually dialed you up. You talked them out of it. And they said, you know what? I'd like to go Laporta here, 1.75. I think this is where the first tight end is going to come off the board. Even though, yes, I know that it's going to be 2 Detroit Lions. That's fine. Ben Johnson's staying, so everything will be okay.
Wow. So we have our first error by a user. Shane accidentally pocket clicked the wrong player here.
Definitely. That's definitely what happened.
I'm up. I'm on the turn. The team has Jamar Chase in the 102. So I'm kind of leaning into to the, can I alleviate the pressure of having to draft a quarterback at that 102? Kind of similar to the argument with the 103, but I'm in the same situation you just were. Do I draft Jared Goff, or do I just hit two assets that I think are worth even more than that?
Here's the thing, though. You're not in the same predicament as the team before because there's no one in between your two picks, right? You're back to back.
And part of it is, if I saw a team that has Amon-Ra St. Brown and they just got Sam Laporta, there's an element of I'm kind of wanting to ditch them a little bit here, right? And take Jared Goff for them. Because I guarantee that you're looking at potentially Jared Goff on the way back. Am I right? With that team?
Possible.
Okay. Shane.
I don't want to talk board.
I have acknowledged that might be your strategy here. What would you pay me to move up 2 spots here to get Jared Goff? And I understand I don't have a lot of leverage because I really don't want to pick here, but I also do not need Jared Goff. So without me tipping my hand telling you I'm not going to pick Jared Goff, what would you trade me to move up? And let's say I make my first pick. I will go Brandon Ayuk with the first pick. His Trinity score is extremely high. He profiles as, if you look at him compared to all the other elite receivers, he's right there with them. So I'm just going to bank on that. So I'm going to take Brandon Ayuk with the first pick. Now with this second pick, I'm sitting here going, man, Shane, what would you give me to move up 1 spot to get your Jared Goff? Would you give me a third?
A third, yes.
So I'm going to offer you this pick for your next pick, which is the one right after this, and you give me your 25 third. Deal?
And it's done.
All right. Have a nice day. So Shane is going to draft Jared Goff, I assume.
Yes.
And now Shane is basically the Team 11 Lions. Is Shane's team.
Yes, it's very risky proposition here, but hey, look, Amon-Ra St. Brown is elite. I think we agree upon that. Sam Laporta showed markings of being elite. Jared Goff gets a long-term contract there. You feel a lot better about this pick.
And Shane is praying that Ben Johnson doesn't change his mind and leave.
Never leaves. But, the news cycle on Ben Johnson with Washington makes it seem like he might not ever leave Detroit. That's another story.
Yeah, it's a different show, but I do have some thoughts on that, that the new age offensive coordinators and maybe what that starts to look like, because they can't just leave every year and then they fail. Half of them fail, and then they get fired, and then they come back around. And it's at some point there has to be some stability at the offensive coordinator position. They can't literally turn over every single team every single year. So I'm up. This team has Chase 102, Brandon Ayuk. Kind of feels like here I'm already kind of invested in leaning into the valuable receivers. I guess what you have to wrestle with here is it too early for the 107? Because it's going to be that we already are making a very strong bet that the 107 is outside the tier break, but it's also maybe the first or second shot at the next tier. And you just bank. All it takes is one person. It could be the QB4. It could be a receiver that goes higher than we expect, a receiver that goes in a better landing spot than we expect. But I also struggle with that, Shane, because I see the receivers on the board, and I actually don't mind 3 or 4 of them literally in place of the best receiver that could land anywhere outside of the top 2 in this rookie class. This is a very tough spot. I think I am going to go out on the limb and bet on the offense. They already have a good quarterback. They're probably going to end up drafting a good receiver. I'm going to take a tight end here. I'm going to take Trey McBride and just bank that I'm getting a similar argument that you had with taking Sam Laporta, that I'm getting a difference maker at tight end, and it's 1.75 premium.
We're not big on player takes, but I got to ask this. So he's your tight end 2 in Dynasty?
Tight end 2 or 3.
All right.
Right there with the Brock Bowers pick, and right there with Laporta. And I think part of it is also he's going to probably have a stable offensive situation, the same quarterback. And I think if they add a guy like Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, it makes him better.
Yeah. I think we're both on the same page. And I've heard a couple people say that, Trey McBride's going to be hurt when they add another weapon there. No, he's not. That's actually going to open it up for Trey McBride. He might not see, games with a 39% target share, but he's still going to be very highly targeted in that offense.
Well, and I don't love the pick. There's a lot of players I could pick. The team that picks at the 408 is going to get just as good as value as I did. Really, it's a bet you're making here is that I'm shooting for a difference-making tight end, just like the team that drafted Jahmyr Gibbs or Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall. You're trying to hit on a difference maker at a position where if you get one, the value is going to bring it home. If Trey McBride is tight end 6, this wasn't a great pick because he's not going to have the trade value that some of the other receivers that are on the board. So I'm going to take a gamble with Trey McBride and take him here. So I'm up again, Anthony Richardson, Tua Tagovailoa, and the 103 rookie pick. I have two stack options here. I could go Jalen Waddle. I could go Michael Pittman. I think I'm going to go Michael Pittman with this pick and stack him with Anthony Richardson. This would be a trade back spot for me if I could pull it off, only because I think it's kind of a dead zone of 5 or 6 receivers that are all the same, but you can go ahead and lock Michael Pittman into that pick, pairing him with Anthony Richardson to form the stack. So Shane is up now, and by golly, Shane, the 107 is on the board. How frisky are you feeling?
This is going to be the 107 specifically because of the build that this team has. I mean, just because this team has to do it. You know what I mean? At this point, they are pot committed. They are not messing around. They're going to go, all right, that's the value works out right there for me anyway, right? But as we're going through this exercise, what I'm realizing, or at least seeing, is you could trade back into, assuming a draft breaks this way, and I think it could, you could trade back into the 4th round and build a hell of a wide receiver room if you could find a way to get 3 of those picks. But no, this person's going to take 107 because, well, they're just going pick crazy. And guess what? Now they pretty much own this draft, this rookie draft. People are going to have to come to them.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it feel like you actually got more value on your 106 now because you have back-to-back? That like you have a stranglehold on whatever that 3rd tier of players looks like?
Yeah. Yeah, they control the draft. They literally control the draft. So I'm really liking this person's team. It's fun for someone that likes rookie picks.
Yeah, so this next pick is the team that started with Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, and Christian McCaffrey. Man, it feels like this team is in a weird spot because it's all in on production. Do you go with something that could be a little value insulation? Do you continue to go down the road? I mean, this team could go with a running back and just go, I'm going to try to thread the needle and hit on another running back because there's not many left that really have much dynasty value. We might already be to the point where the dynasty value is gone at running back. This team could go with a rookie pick for the flexibility. And there's not really an obvious stack here because I have Justin Herbert, I have Kyler Murray, went Christian McCaffrey. You're probably just drafting whoever you feel like the best receiver is off the board. I'm going to go out on a limb. And this is one of the few times where you get a player take from Mr. Charles Chill. But I think everything is lining up for Drake London. They just have to find a quarterback, a competent one, not even a good one. Just one that the main skill of that QB is like delivering the ball to the right players. Because don't you kind of feel there's a little overreaction that could come with Atlanta where like the post Arthur Smith era could be just give the ball to like the 3 studs as much as possible?
I almost feel like I think in the conversations that they were having that was what was discussed with Raheem Morris is so how much can you concentrate our work to those 3 players?
Yes. And is Drake London better than DJ Moore? The body of work says no. Is he as good as even Jalen Waddle? Debatable. But here's the thing. He's 22. Those other guys, they're 25, 26. They are what they are. There's never going to be a point in Dynasty where it goes, I have to go buy Drake London, or I have to go buy DJ Moore or Jalen Waddle. We could look up in June and Shane is going to get myself some more Drake London. I just got to get more. They've signed Kirk Cousins and they've made a vow to give Drake London a 30% target share. Like you could see yourself, Drake London cracking in the top 8, top 10, right? Because he's put up the peripherals that says he's easily able to get there. So I think I'm going to go Drake London here to pair with Herbert, Kyler, McCaffrey. And I do think there's a little insulation and value upside where in 3 months, I may be able to tier down from Drake London and get 2 pieces just because he moves up into that top 10. So he's the pick. Did I snipe you, Shane? Are you going another receiver? This is Jefferson Puka Olave. How are you feeling here?
I don't know. I think this might be my favorite team out of the draft besides the rookie pick ones. The rookie pick ones is fun. This is just absolutely bananas at this point because it's what does this person do? Do they go Baker Mayfield here? This feels incredibly high for Baker Mayfield, right? But I'll say this. I've seen Baker Mayfield get traded for the 108 in leagues. So that's about where his value is since that's where we are. Ooh, no. I'm going to keep hammering the wide receivers. I can't believe he's still on the board. Oh, this is really good. Who do you like better? I'm going to Tank Dell. We're going to go that crazy upside. No, we're not. Nico Collins is still on the board. We're going Nico Collins. It's Nico Collins.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go Mr. Wide Receiver 7, DJ Moore last year. I guess you could go a lot of different directions here.
I mean, I don't want to say that's a problem. That's kind of the beauty of this round, right? This is a really fun round for wide receivers. No, they're not the Justin Jefferson tier, but they're, a tier or two below, but they're still very productive.
Yeah, so this team is up now. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and the 105. Honestly, Shane, I know you're not a huge fan of Trevor Lawrence, but I kind of like where this team sits because it's got some flexibility. It has two quarterbacks locked down that you have no long-term concerns about their job security or their place. You may not love their potential upside, but you have a lot of flexibility, and you have that 105 pick, which may be a trade piece for one of these teams that wants to trade back or one of these teams that potentially wants to get a quarterback. So it's kind of a flexible pick. It's a nice pick to have in there when you already have quarterbacks taken care of. So I am just going to check the box here. This will be a spot I would also be willing to trade back 2 spots, because I think there's 3 receivers that you could throw into this tier. So I'm going to draft Jalen Waddle. I don't love it. This is just a guy where I don't love him being my wide receiver 1, but maybe if I get Malik Neighbors, he's my wide receiver 2. I feel a lot better about that if the 105 ends up being Malik Neighbors. So I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. I think we're going to see a lot of picks like this, Shane, where it's just checking a box. You're taking productive receivers that don't have, top 10 ceilings. It's all just kind of placeholders for maybe the next 5 to 10 receiver picks. So you are up. Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, AJ Brown. What are you doing with this pick?